Long time no see, Mary. A man and a woman, waving their hands as they approached us while we were shopping. It was my sister Maya and my former fiance Mike.
Maya, why are you here?
Oh, did I not tell you? This guy, he got transferred from over there. Living in a fancy condo nearby. Compared to you, you look kinda poor. While saying this, Maya looked my husband Neil up and down. From Maya's perspective, Neil, in his work clothes, might indeed seem that way. However, speaking of that condo, are you talking about that one in the mall and in front of the station? Oh, that is mine, actually. Nonchalantly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, Neil said.
What did you just say?
Well, if you're talking about a condo around here, that's the only one, right? Then it's mine.
What do you mean?
Exactly as I said. There was a plan to build on one of the lands we've owned for a long time, and it sold beyond our expectations. Thanks to that, the land value went up and the taxes are a nightmare. After saying this, Neil invited the two to our farm. As soon as we got in the car, he quickly made a phone call home. Hello, Mom? It's me. Yeah, I've finally caught a big one, so it's time to execute the plan. Apparently, something was happening without my knowledge. My name is Mary. I'm a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids, married to Neil, who is 4 years my senior. Currently, I'm happily living with my family on a farm. However, my life before marrying my current husband was always about losing something. I was born in the middle of 3 sisters. My sister Maya has been cute since she was little, skilled with her hands, and quick-witted, the pride of our parents. Without much effort, she always had good grades and was the star in elementary and middle school. On the other hand, I had a plain face, very unlike Maya. And my grades were average. My mom always used to tell me, "You're so plain and unremarkable, there's no joy in dressing you up." She would then proceed to unconditionally buy new clothes for Maya alone, as much as she requested. Since I wasn't developing as well, I was always given Maya's hand-me-downs. I often heard from my classmates how flashy or ill-fitting my clothes were. I was frequently asked, "Why are you wearing something that doesn't suit you?" But I disliked saying it was all I had. Probably, my friends were told something by their parents because eventually they stopped commenting. As for studies, my dad often sighed and said to me, "Why don't you try to follow in your sister's footsteps a bit more with your studies?" Despite his words, from around upper elementary school, I wasn't just doing my homework but also thoroughly preparing and reviewing lessons. I was well aware of my limitations, which is why I tried to do what I could properly. Yet, that didn't mean I could get good grades right away. I grew up sighing a lot, and then it was time to think about further education. "You're only going up to high school," my dad declared flatly.
Why?
"Because Maya wants to go to a university in New York. You don't have great grades anyway, so it should be fine." The age difference between us was a problem. The expenses for both of us would come almost the same time. As a result, Maya went to the private school she wanted, and I ended up in public school all the way. Later, Maya wanted to go to a private university in downtown New York. That's a plane ride away. Not to mention the difference in living costs. Living alone in such a place. It meant that my parents had already decided to cut down on expenses for me. It might have even meant they wanted me to start working soon and contribute to the household. And my youngest sister, for years younger than me, Sally, often silently watched all this happen. Amidst a life filled with sighs, without much I wanted to do, I ended up working at a local agricultural cooperative right after high school graduation. I was basically an office worker. Moreover, it was a rural area, far from any hint of chic. Some parts still carried the vibe of the old era, while oddly enough, others were pretty high-tech. Dealing with people there was monotonous, but it suited me just fine. Maya would probably rather die than live there. Before I knew it, 7 years had flown by, and at the young age of 25, I was already considered a veteran in this workplace where people tended to marry young. That's when I unexpectedly met a man. At a mixer, I was invited to buy a younger coworker. I met Mike, a salesperson from a client company. We surprisingly hit it off and started dating soon after. Our relationship progressed unbelievably well, and he proposed in less than a year. We were planning to get married 6 months later. But as our wedding plans were advancing, Maya, who was supposed to be working for a company in the city after graduating from college, quit her job and came back home.
I just couldn't stand that company anymore.
Well, if you say so, it must be true. You must be tired, just take it easy for a while. And so, day after day, my parents gave Maya money to lounge around and took her out, spending their days in what seemed like pure enjoyment. Then, one day, it happened.
What, you're getting married?
Yes, that's right.
I'll have to see what kind of guy he is for myself.
With that, Maya smirked. You don't need to do that.
Huh?
You're saying you won't listen to your sister? Saying that, she grabbed my hair and pulled my cheek hard. In the end, Maya came to the wedding venue for discussions. There were many things to decide, but Mike seemed distracted that day. I had a bad feeling, and a few days later, Maya bluntly told me,
Mike is going to be mine. But the wedding is already set, and the venue.
As I protested, my parents sided with Maya.
Oh, it just has to be Maya instead of you. Exactly, it doesn't change anything between the families, and we haven't sent out the invitations yet.
I couldn't grasp what they were saying. Were they planning to use the wedding, for which I also paid half, for Maya and Mike instead? I confronted Mike. With unusual force and intensity. I'm sorry. But I have to take responsibility. It seemed Maya had made advances and he couldn't refuse. I was shocked to learn he was that kind of person, but I was even more unable to forgive Maya. Yet, being unable to forgive didn't mean I could do anything about it at the time. Above all, my parents were blatantly favoring Maya. I was out of options.
Then you might as well throw it all away,
said my sister, who had recently graduated from a local college.
Mary, you don't need to stay here forever. Staying here, you'll just keep having things taken from you.
Those words changed something in me. Right, there's no reason I have to stay here.
Don't worry about me. I'm managing better than you think,
she said, giving me a push. I immediately told my boss about the sudden cancellation of my wedding and discussed resigning. My boss was shocked and listened to the whole story up to that day. Then, instead of resigning, he suggested a transfer. My diligent work and ability to handle various local farmers too well to let go. I gratefully accepted the offer and moved out with just my belongings before their wedding. Living alone and starting at a new workplace, I finally felt like I could breathe freely away from that family. The city I moved to was slightly smaller than my hometown but was still a significant urban area here. Perhaps because I felt more at ease, I started socializing more with colleagues. And then, there was another mixer, but I was done with marriage. However, I went just to keep up appearances. This time, they specifically asked for you, a colleague said. The attendees were heirs to neighboring farms. The situation for farmers' wives seemed to be quite strict. That's where I met Neil, my current husband. I knew him only as a business contact. Encouraged by a colleague, I decided to date him, and Neil turned out to be a fun and generous person. And I visited his family's home several times.
Wow, this is amazing.
Well, it's pretty normal around here. They owned a vast land, half for livestock and half for crops. The family was large and very generous. They always served fresh and delicious food and were constantly smiling. They subtly asked why I always seemed bewildered by their close-knit family.
I'm just surprised to see a family that gets along so well together.
When I shared my past experiences with my parents and Maya as calmly as possible, they were outraged. Then,
what's with them? The sister is one thing, but the guy and the parents too?
Leaving them was the right choice.
Exactly, so come stay with us.
I had always felt guilty about being dumped by a man.
But this generous family was genuinely angry at the unfairness of my parents, Maya and Mike. I immediately wondered if the invitation to come to our place was really all right. And somehow, I found myself agreeing without hesitation. Without even having time to wonder if it's okay to be a farmer's wife. When I called my parents to tell them about the marriage. Marrying into a farm? I'm too ashamed to even show my face. They refused to attend the ceremony out of embarrassment. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law snatched the phone from me and declared, "We don't need anything to do with that family. Mary is going to be our daughter-in-law," with refreshing vigor.
What's with those people? Really, Mary, you don't have to do anything with them anymore. I've been sending them money, but I wonder if they'll say something if I stop. You were doing that?
My in-laws were a mix of astonishment and anger, nodding in agreement as if they had made a decision. My sister contacted me to let me know when the wedding was set. In the end, she was the only one from my family who attended. When she got married, I made sure to avoid my parents and went to celebrate her wedding. By the way, I continued working at the cooperative for a while after getting married. Taking up farming work right away was out of the question, Neil and my in-laws told me.
You don't have the same physical strength as us. It's better if you do work that suits you.
My presence at the cooperative had apparently made the work flow smoother. Still, that phase of my life came to an end rather quickly. I had one child. And then a year later, another one. With the pace at which we were having children, I left my job to focus on raising the kids, household chores, and helping with the finances. Farm life means early mornings and late nights, but having someone always around made it much easier than the solo parenting you often hear about in the city. And the food, always delicious. We cooked in large quantities, and everything from the vegetables to the milk was incredibly tasty. The kids ate well and played hard, growing up freely alongside their cousins from Neil's younger brother's family. Neil was something of a leader among the young people in the area, so I started attending their gatherings too. Without being compared to anyone and out of my parents' sight, I finally felt truly happy. Then one day, encouraged by my in-laws, Neil and I went shopping at the mall, just the two of us for the first time in a while.
Really, is that okay?
We have some things we want you to pick up, they said, probably knowing we rarely got time alone together. Just experiencing this family's kindness was a relief in itself. We leisurely drove to the mall, reaching an area that could be considered downtown. As we filled 2 carts with requested items and more, strolling through the spacious mall and chatting.
Mary?
A high voice reached my ears. No way.
Oh, yes. Long time no see, Mary.
A man and a woman, waving as they approached us.
Maya.
I murmured softly, gripping the cart's handle tightly.
Hey, long time no see.
Beside me was Mike, though he seemed to have aged quite a bit.
Why are you here?
Oh, didn't I tell you?
This guy got transferred here. Living in a fancy condo nearby.
Compared to you, you look kinda poor. While saying this, Maya looked Neil over from head to toe. Indeed, from Maya's perspective, Neil in his work clothes might seem that way. And here I am, just in my everyday clothes. But then,
speaking of condo, are you talking about that one between this mall and the station?
Neil suddenly spoke up. Yes, that one.
It's very popular with people from out of town now, and we had to wait to get a place there. Of course, it's none of your concern, being from a farm out in the sticks. Oh, that condo is actually mine.
Neil said nonchalantly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world.
What did you just say? Well, if you're talking about a condo around here, that's the only one, right? Then it's mine. What do you mean?
Exactly as I said.
There was a plan for one of the lands we've owned for a long time, and when we built it, it sold beyond our expectations. Thanks to that, the land value shot up, and the taxes are a nightmare.
Taxes. I remember encountering some unusually high property taxes while helping with the accounting. I had wondered why, given that the taxes around our area aren't usually that significant.
Is that so?
Yes, it is. Would you like to come over to our place? I turned to Neil, surprised.
Are you sure?
Then Maya's demeanor changed.
Hey, it's rude to barge in like that, isn't it? It's rude not to accept their invitation after they've asked us so nicely.
Shopping was abruptly paused, and we decided to drive to each other's places. Back at the car, Neil called home as soon as he sat in the driver's seat.
Hey, Mom?
It's me.
Yeah, we finally caught a big one, so it's time to execute the plan.
What was he talking about? After saying just that, Neil ended the call.
A plan?
Yeah.
Well, we've had our own thoughts about things.
I had no idea you owned a condo.
Well, it's sort of like insurance, you know?
Neil explained to me.
Even places like ours can have a hard time with farming, depending on nature. And our family happened to own that land in the area for generations.
So you built a condo there?
Well, kind of half and half. Not all of it. For people coming from outside, the view is incredibly appealing.
That much was true. Even if the view was just fields and mountains, their vastness made each season a sight to behold.
For those with money from outside, it must be nice.
Would you want to live there? I immediately shook my head.
I like our current home best. Everyone's here.
Me too. With that, we hurried back home. During the drive, Neil shared a surprising plan with me.
Can we really do that? You know about our family's unity, right? And we're good at following through with plans.
That was true. But still. Watching Maya's car follow us in the rearview mirror, I wondered if it would really work. When we arrived home, my in-laws greeted us with, "Oh, welcome," in their usual, no, even warmer smiles for the sister and her husband.
Is it okay to take time off now?
At this hour, there should still be work in the fields and with the cows.
It's fine. We knew we had important guests coming.
Maya, the guest in question, looked around the house as soon as she entered. Probably surprised by its size. It is indeed spacious. There are many people living here. And multiple households.
Well, I've only met your sister before. I had no idea you had such a beautiful sister.
My father-in-law said with a hearty laugh. While that was happening, I was in the kitchen preparing something to serve our guests.
It's better if Mary doesn't come out there.
Huh?
Just watch from here for a while,
she suggested, pointing to a chair in the kitchen. Wondering what she meant, I sat as told and watched the living room scene. At the low table, my father-in-law and Neil were seated, offering the visiting couple, "We don't have much," sweet potatoes and potato cakes that had been prepared in advance. From the spot my mother-in-law showed me, I could see everything clearly. Yet I was out of sight from them. Opening a beer, my father-in-law mentioned, "So I hear you're living in our apartment." Yes. Oh, speaking of the apartment. He signaled Neil with a look. Just a moment. Neil said, retrieving an envelope from the living room cabinet.
There's something we need to show you, or rather, something for you to see. What would that be?
Mike tilted his head, puzzled. This is. Neil handed him a large document envelope, from which Mike started to pull out papers but stopped. Instead, he pulled out a bunch of photos mounted on album pages.
This is.
Mike's face tensed up.
Yeah, we got a call from the building manager saying the security cameras caught some suspicious people lately. When we got the data, it looked familiar, so we did a little digging.
Mike silently flipped through the album pages, eventually dropping them in shock.
What the hell? Maya, who is this?
In a groaning voice, Mike turned to Maya, seeking answers. As I wondered what was going on, my mother-in-law silently tapped my shoulder and handed me the stack of photos.
What?
I almost shouted out loud and instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. What I saw were photos of Maya inviting an unknown man into her room, the two of them visible through a window, entering a hotel in broad daylight and later coming out separately, among other things.
How do you have these?
It's a secret, my mother-in-law said, clearly amused. Then, looking back into the living room, I saw Mike glaring at Maya with an incredulous look.
Have you been saying we don't need kids yet because you wouldn't be able to do this kind of thing? That's not me, it's a lie. Well, we've confirmed with the building manager that you said you had business with your sister-in-law.
Neil pressed on.
Then, what about these other photos?
Well, that's the thing. Cheating is just not right, my father-in-law said casually.
After taking your sister's man, do you still want other men?
How old are you, anyway? Let's see. She's 3 years older, Mary mentioned.
Mary set this up.
That's not the point, Neil said, as Mike tried to return the envelope. Oh, you can keep that.
There might be some documents in there you'll need. What?
Mike looked inside again and pulled out a large piece of paper.
Indeed, this might be necessary. Wait, a divorce paper? Just like that? What?
In a panic, Maya faced Mike, who began speaking in a low, steady voice.
You told me to take responsibility, remember?
You said you missed your period.
I thought I had gotten you pregnant, so I decided to marry you.
But what now?
What do you mean? It seems I had relations with you in a drunken stupor. I don't remember it, but there was evidence.
So, considering what followed, I thought I should take responsibility. But you weren't pregnant, and ever since then, you keep saying you don't want kids now. How old are we again? Round it up, we're almost 40, right?
I'm only 35. Don't say such awful things.
I believed you when you said you wanted to raise just one child carefully.
That's why I worked hard, improved my sales performance, got transferred, and even got that apartment. You nagged me until we got a spot and took out a loan to buy it. Yet, you always complain about it being on a low floor, always, always, always.
I hadn't known she had been saying that. I'm tired of it all, Neil said, and swiftly pulling out a pen, Mike began to fill out the divorce papers.
Wait, what are you doing? Remember the wedding? Your parents did whatever they wanted, making us look like a family of fools. No one came, not even my parents.
I hadn't known that happened.
To this day, my dad and mom haven't forgiven me. You were happy there was no trouble with your in-laws. Oh, so you've been such an unfilial child. That must have been tough. I was even told not to come to my brother's wedding.
Mike said this with a contorted face, looking older perhaps due to the stress.
I've had enough of this situation. Right, Maya? You're tired of me too, aren't you, given the circumstances? That's not true. I can't live without you. Because you haven't worked since we got married. But I don't care anymore.
He signed on the divorce papers and thrust them in front of Maya. Here.
I don't want to.
If you don't want to, that's fine. I'm going home.
By the way, this envelope is from a detective agency, right?
Yes.
We thoroughly investigated the safety of the apartment we own. Solid evidence.
Thank you, Mike said, nodding slightly.
Let me know the costs later. I'll pay in full. And Maya, I'll be seeking alimony from you. I don't have that kind of money.
Faced with the blunt reality of financial demands, Maya was thrown into disarray.
You could always go back to your hometown and easily make money off men, right? I'm busy from now on, so I'm heading back. Going back? What am I supposed to do? Apologize and ask your sister for help.
With that, Mike picked up the envelope and stood up to leave. He was glancing at me briefly.
Wait a minute.
Maya scrambled to her feet and tried to follow Mike out. But she couldn't keep up with Mike, who was seriously picking up the pace. We quietly followed them outside.
Wait! Don't leave me behind!
Perhaps due to a lack of exercise or her shoes, Maya tripped and fell. Somehow, she managed to get up and tried to continue the chase.
Ouch! Huh? Where's my car?
It was then Mike raised his voice. Then.
Oh, if you're looking for that car, it was in the way of the entrance, so I had it moved.
A carefree voice called out from a distance, accompanied by the sound of machinery. It was Neil's brother on a tractor.
Hey! Where is it now?
Over there. He pointed in a direction a few hundred meters away where their car was parked. Mike headed towards it with long strides, visibly frustrated. Maya breathlessly tried to keep up. Then, it happened. Our dogs ran towards Maya.
What's with these dogs?
Sorry, they're just really friendly towards new guests. Neil casually came outside and raised his voice. If you try to run away awkwardly, they'll just chase you more. But it seems like Maya didn't hear Neil's warning.
No, stop, please.
I don't think Maya necessarily disliked dogs. But she might not have been immune to dogs that run around outside. She hated getting dirty. And our dogs, always running around the farm, are full of energy.
Hey you! Mike! Help me!
Mike glanced back briefly but then turned and continued walking briskly towards his car. The dogs, barking joyfully, kept approaching Maya. Well, that figures. Even dogs approaching happily can seem like monsters to those who are not fond of them. And I, watching all this from a distance.
No! Stop!
As Maya tripped over her feet trying to change direction and move forward. She fell hard and screamed from the bottom of her heart.
What is this? Ugh, it smells.
She had landed in a pile of fluffy cow manure compost. Still warm from the fermentation process. Oh, are you all right? Came the leisurely voice of Neil's brother. As two dogs climbed on top of the fallen Maya, licking her face. But Maya seemed too dazed to react. Understandably so. Dressed up for going out, she had plunged headfirst into the compost, covering herself from head to toe. It's hard to find a spot on her not smeared with manure. The dogs, undeterred, continued to play and rub against Maya, barking and woofing.
Darn it! No choice then.
Seeing Maya in a daze, Mike, though frustrated, managed to get the car closer.
Let's go. Don't cause any more trouble for this household.
Even Mike couldn't just watch silently Maya's miserable state. He grabbed a part of Maya's clothing that wasn't dirty and threw her into the back seat of the car.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't want you sitting next to me. But it'll be trouble later on.
Watching from a distance, we half sympathized with them as Mike nodded to us before driving away. That evening, we received a call from the apartment's building manager.
That smell was terrible.
That's unfortunate. Please make sure to charge for the full house cleaning.
Of course. Even though this area is known for livestock farming, this place near the station is populated by people not accustomed to it. The residents were in an uproar today. It wasn't just the entrance and hallways, the parking lot was also affected by the smell.
Listening on speaker mode, I caught Neil's smirk and felt a mix of amusement and relief. Honestly, living in this environment, I'd forgotten that appearing covered in compost in the middle of the city would indeed be a terrible sight. Especially for Maya, who prides herself on her appearance.
Especially the complaints from the upper floors are severe. We'll address it as quickly as possible.
Right.
Oh, that couple is probably going to divorce, so addressing it quickly might also help push that along. Indeed! It would be better for us if they moved out.
When we hung up, the family around me gave thumbs up as if to say, good job. It seemed this had been a long setup. Apparently, their moving into the condo was guided by our family. In this region, companies are somehow related to agriculture. And farmers keep in touch. My current family, knowing my situation as a bride who came to a farming family, had been checking on my sister and parents, who had treated me poorly. They had circulated information about the condo being available on the second floor, used and cheap. Knowing Maya would jump at the word condo.
Well, we didn't know when we'd meet again.
Neil explained to me.
So, you were planning to execute this if we met again?
That's the idea, the family said, smiling warmly at me. The dogs that had come to the veranda also barked in agreement. Oh, these people. I just had to laugh. Later on, I heard from Sally that Maya was officially getting divorced.
It was a mess.
Sally reported to me with a hearty laugh. It turns out Sally and her husband are now running the family home that Maya left when she got married. The wedding they had, influenced by those two, significantly tarnished our parents' reputation. Sally took advantage of that situation, apologizing for our no-good parents to win over the community and took control of the household. Then Maya, following her affair and subsequent divorce, had the audacity to try and come back.
No way she's coming back into this house. After all the effort to get our parents in line, we can't just let a parasite back in.
Sally maintained a firm stance publicly.
Attitude really is everything, huh? So, what happened to Maya? I don't know. She should pay her own alimony, right? Oh, and apparently, Maya left her last job because she couldn't do the work and there were some inappropriate relationships.
That was news to me.
And after being a stay-at-home wife with a gap in her resume, plus now a divorce due to an affair? Geez, what kind of job can she even get? Maybe something in the night industry? Though, that might actually suit her.
Sally. But Mike had said the same thing.
You know, Mary, I used to get so irritated watching her. But really, with parents and a sister like that, it was inevitable.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I learned from them what not to do early on. Now, I've got control of the household.
That made sense to me.
You can relax from now on. Forget about us and just enjoy being pampered and happy over there.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll come visit you next time.
Okay, I'll be waiting. Almost a year later. As promised, though a bit delayed, Sally visited our home.
Congratulations on the third child, sis.
Yes, since then, I had given birth to a third child. Today was a celebration for that.
Thank you. I heard you're expecting your second?
Yep. We're stopping at 2, but are you planning to have more?
Yeah. Here, kids can grow up without any bias, freely.
Indeed, the older kids were taking care of the younger ones, and the younger ones were always looking for something they could do. I was a little worried I might raise them like my parents did. But with this place and this family, I believed we could be happy without those concerns. That's what I thought.
I'm not cold, leave me alone. I won't hand this child over to someone bad like you.
On the evening when a major cold wave was reported on the news, I was hurrying home. That's when I happened to spot my niece, but something about her seemed off. For some reason, she wasn't wearing her coat, just carrying it in her arms. Looking closer at what she was holding, I was shocked to see it was a baby. Moreover, both my niece and the baby looked unusually thin and their clothes were dirty.
In this cold, where are you going with a baby?
Unable to ignore my shivering niece, I offered to let her rest at my house for a bit. As soon as she saw me, she snapped at me angrily.
Shut up! Who says I'm going to your house?
I have a bad relationship with my sister, and her daughter, my niece, dislikes me as well. Still, her rejection was stronger than I expected, which took me aback. But under the cold sky, I felt it was dangerous to leave my niece and the baby alone. Trying to sound as gentle as possible and smiling, I invited my niece to my house, but she firmly refused.
Mom said to never trust you. You're a good-for-nothing.
My niece wouldn't take my hand, ignoring everything I said, and kept resisting with her faltering body. What should I do? How can I help them? While I was internally panicking but still trying to persuade my niece, a car unexpectedly pulled up right beside us. Shocked at what might be happening next, I was astonished to see my husband stepping out of the car. Well, no choice then, I'll have to take her by force. He simply said, and before we knew it, he swiftly picked up my niece, baby and all, and quickly placed them inside the car. Hurry up and get in, he urged me, and as I scrambled into the passenger seat, he started the car somewhat roughly. I protested his forceful action, akin to a kidnapping, but he drove on without a word. The place we eventually arrived at left me breathless. My name is Maple. I'm a typical 29-year-old housewife, born and raised in an ordinary family and married to an ordinary man. I have an older sister by 2 years. I don't recall our relationship being particularly bad during our childhood. Though we had our fights occasionally, we also played together, just an average pair of siblings. However, after becoming adults and getting married, my sister changed. The man she married was what you would call wealthy. He drove a luxury car, wore high-end watches, and was always dressed in stylish suits. Influenced by her husband's values, my sister's spending became extravagant after getting married. She started buying high-end clothes and accessories one after another, and even for daily groceries, she would only shop at upscale supermarkets. Not only that, but she began to look down on me and our parents, calling us poverty-stricken. Moreover, my sister and her husband lived in the town next to ours, and she would boast about her house at every opportunity, which honestly got annoying. Ah, living in an apartment is something only poor people do, how pitiful. If you had married a rich man like I did, you could have lived in a spacious and beautiful house like mine. This house is super comfortable, well worth the $1 million we spent on it. Every time we met, my sister would flaunt her wealth, and my irritation grew until one day I finally snapped.
Enough! Always talking about money, it's so annoying. I'm happy with my house and my life. Stop interfering!
As I screamed at her, red-faced and nearly lunging forward, she snorted and laughed.
Oh, you must be jealous, aren't you? Oh no, the jealousy of the poor is so unseemly.
Seeing my sister looking down and mocking me, I came to despise her deeply in my heart. Following that incident, my sister's snide remarks escalated. Even at family gatherings at our parents' house, she would deliberately mock me and my husband.
Is that all your husband makes? So little, he must be an incompetent regular employee. Oh, is that why you have to work part-time? Wow, that's sad. Your wedding was really cheap, wasn't it? It was almost all family there. In contrast, look at ours. Our ceremony was lavish. We had 100 guests, and the dress, venue, and food were all top-notch. If only you could have married up like I did.
My greedy sister even tried to take my necklace once. It was the only branded item I owned, a treasure gifted by my husband for my birthday. But it seemed my sister couldn't stand me owning a brand item.
How dare a poor person like you wear branded goods? Actually, it doesn't suit you at all, it's a pity for the necklace. It would look much better on me, so hand it over.
In the end, she didn't manage to take the necklace, but she tore the chain, and I quietly cried, feeling as though she had destroyed a memory shared with my husband. After that incident, I started to ignore my sister completely, feeling nothing but discomfort whenever we met. In avoiding her, I also decided to distance myself from her family. However, my brother-in-law was always busy with work and frequently on business trips, so we seldom saw each other anyway. Even when we did meet, in stark contrast to my chatty sister, my brother-in-law was a man of few words, and we hardly ever spoke. Nevertheless, being influenced by my sister who flaunted her wealth, I came to view my brother-in-law as someone who was also likely to boast about being wealthy. My sister and her husband have a 9-year-old daughter named Susan, who also seems to dislike me and my husband. I don't think we've done anything to warrant such disdain from her, but every time we meet, she glares at us, and even when spoken to, she hardly responds. While I've grown distant from my sister's family, and it's not particularly an issue, being treated coldly even by my niece does make me feel a bit sad. So, while I have managed to cut ties with my sister and her family, I often hear about my sister's activities through a neighbor who works part-time at the same place as me. According to them, my sister recently gave birth to her second child. In between being busy with childcare, she seems to be living happily, indulging in her favorite brands. On one peaceful day, having no interactions with my sister, leading a calm life, I encountered an unexpected incident. It was in the dead of winter when the news was all about an incoming severe cold wave. With snow expected to start falling, I headed to the local supermarket to finish up some shopping. It was incredibly cold, as the news had warned, and I was walking briskly with my scarf pulled up to my nose. Then, on my way, I happened to spot my niece, Susan. Before Susan noticed me, I thought about quickly leaving. However, something about her seemed off, catching my attention. Strangely, she wasn't wearing her coat, just holding it in her arms. Looking closer at what she was carrying, I realized it was a baby, to my surprise. Moreover, both Susan and the baby looked unnaturally thin and their clothes were dirty. She was walking with her nose bright red, clutching the coat tightly around the baby as if to protect it from the cold. Clearly struggling and shivering from the cold herself. "Susan, where are you going in this cold with a baby? Come on, at least come to my place to warm up for a bit." I couldn't just ignore her and called out to my niece. Startled by my voice, she jumped and then, upon seeing me, started yelling at me aggressively.
"Shut up! Who says I'm going to your house?"
Though I knew she disliked me, her vehement rejection took me aback. But under such cold conditions, I felt it was dangerous to leave her and the baby alone.
"But you must be cold without your coat on, right? Let's warm up at my place for a bit. Then, I can take you home, okay?"
I tried to speak to my niece with the gentlest tone and a smile, but she was adamant in her refusal.
"It's not cold, just leave me alone. I have to protect this baby. I won't hand them over to someone bad like you." "I wouldn't hurt you or the baby, I promise." "Lies. Mom said to never trust you."
Despite my attempts to reach out, my niece wouldn't grab my hand and refused to listen to anything I said, continuing to resist with her unsteady body. I was internally panicking, wondering how I could possibly help them when suddenly a car pulled up right beside us. To my surprise, it was my husband who got out of the car. "Well, no choice then, I guess I'll have to take you by force." Saying just that, he quickly picked up my niece, baby and all, and placed them in the car. "Maple, hurry up and get in," he urged, and as I rushed into the passenger seat, he started the car with a bit of roughness. "Just stay calm, and I won't harm you. Please, don't make a fuss," he said nonchalantly, not even looking at my niece. As for my niece, perhaps intimidated by my husband's firmness or the suddenness of being brought into the car, she became quiet, a stark contrast to her previous behavior. However, she looked so pale and weak that she seemed like she might collapse at any moment. My husband took us, including my niece and the baby, straight to the hospital. Lost in confusion, my niece and the baby were taken away by a nurse. While waiting for their examination to finish, I asked my husband, "Hey, what's all this about? Why were you there just now? And why rush to the hospital of all places?" His forceful action, almost akin to kidnapping, made me slightly confrontational, but he responded with a wry smile. "It was pure coincidence that I was there, just happened to pass by on my way home from work. I was curious about what you were arguing about, but more than that, Susan and the baby looked terribly pale. I just thought we needed to get them to a warm place right away." He initially thought our home would suffice for warmth, but was alarmed by their unnaturally light weight when he picked them up. Fearing that their poor complexion wasn't just due to the cold but possibly due to illness, he instinctively decided to head not home but to a hospital that could provide appropriate care. Although being suddenly put in the car was a shock, if my husband hadn't shown up and it was just me, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Reflecting on it, his actions, while abrupt, were immensely appreciated. Eventually, it seemed the examination for my niece and the baby was complete, and my husband and I were informed about their condition by the doctor. Apparently, both were suffering from malnutrition and were now receiving 4 drips while resting in warm beds. Aside from malnutrition, there appeared to be no other abnormalities, providing us some initial relief. However, the situation of a 9-year-old wandering outside without any adult supervision, carrying a malnourished infant, raised suspicions of neglect. When we informed the doctor that we were not fully aware of the circumstances, he immediately reported the situation to the police. About 30 minutes later, after the 4 had finished and my niece woke up, we had a chance to talk to her. Whether it was the hospital environment or the warmth of the place that calmed her down, my niece was no longer in her previous state of total refusal and was willing to engage in a normal conversation. According to her, my sister, her mother, was currently away on a trip with friends and not at home. Likewise, my brother-in-law was absent due to his usual business trips. During my sister's absence, she had left the entire care of the baby to my niece with the instruction, "You take care of it." However, without any specific guidance, my niece had been trying to care for the baby by imitating what she had seen her mother do. Amidst this, the baby's complexion turned pale, and it started crying inconsolably. Unable to calm the baby down, my niece decided to take the baby to the hospital. She used her only coat to wrap the baby for warmth and set out for the hospital despite the cold. I stumbled upon my niece during that journey. Had we not found them, my niece and her siblings might have frozen to death by now. Realizing this possibility made me shiver.
That must have been tough. By the way, why did you have such an aversive attitude towards my wife?
My husband casually inquired, and my niece awkwardly averted her gaze as she responded. Apparently, from a young age, my sister had instilled in her the lie that I was a bad person. She told my niece, "I was bullied by my sister since we were kids. She's a bad person, so you must never get close to her." Of course, that was a lie from my sister, but to a child, a mother's words are everything. Without verifying the truth, my niece grew up believing I was the enemy who bullied her mother. However, witnessing how my husband and I earnestly tried to help them this time made her question what she had been told by her mother. "Is what Mom said true? Were you bullying her?" My niece asked with sincere eyes, and I shook my head in response.
"Your mom and I got along when we were kids.
If you don't believe me, you should ask Grandma and Grandpa." Moved by my answer, my niece tearfully bowed deeply.
"I'm sorry for being so defiant when you were just trying to help. I'm sorry for hating you all this time because I believed what Mom said."
Understanding the reason my niece had always disliked us brought me relief, but also a strong anger towards my sister. According to my niece, my sister wouldn't be back until tomorrow, so we decided to take care of my niece and her siblings for the night. After apologizing, my niece seemed to feel lighter and started to engage in normal conversations with us, albeit still a bit awkwardly. Feeling her becoming more comfortable, I asked her about her daily life while we were eating dinner at our house. It turned out that even before the baby was born, my niece often had to stay home alone. During those times, my sister neither prepared meals in advance nor gave her money for food, leaving my niece to go hungry. I felt a simmering anger towards my sister's selfish actions. After ensuring my niece and the baby were fed and had fallen asleep, I called my parents to plan revenge on my sister. The next day, my husband and I took my niece and her siblings to my sister's house. My parents were already waiting there, and my mother rushed to embrace my niece and her siblings the moment she saw them.
"You've had a tough time, haven't you? You did well."
Held by my mother, my niece quietly shed tears. Then, we decided to wait for my sister's return. While leaving my niece with my mother, I went around the neighborhood to inquire about my sister's behavior. When I shared that she had been neglecting my niece and the baby to go out, most of the neighbors were outraged and shared their observations of my sister's usual cold treatment towards my niece, including frequently yelling at her. Also, having learned that my sister was expected to return home sometime after noon today, I waited for her with my parents. I tried calling my sister's cell to inform her that we had taken care of my niece overnight and that we were waiting for her return at her house, but as expected, she did not answer. So, ignoring my sister's lack of response, I continued to wait for her return at the entrance of her house, together with my parents. After a while, my sister arrived back home with a few friends.
"What? Why are you here? And Mom and Dad too? What do you want?"
Upon seeing me, my sister immediately showed her displeasure without trying to hide it. I stared back at her without backing down and said, "Last night, we found Susan walking with the baby and took care of them. I tried contacting you many times, but you never noticed, did you?" There should have been numerous missed calls from not only me but also the police and our parents regarding this matter. Pointing this out to my sister, who seemed unaware, prompted her to hurriedly check her phone. Seeing the call log, the color drained from her face. Realizing the situation was serious after seeing missed calls from the police as well, she said, "Oh. I just remembered I have something else to do. So, I'll be going." "Wait. Where do you think you're going?" As she tried to flee, our father grabbed her by the scruff of the neck to stop her. Caught by our father, my sister momentarily tried to struggle and resist but soon gave up and hung her head in resignation. Our parents have always been strict about manners and etiquette, and from a young age, my sister and I were brought up to be well disciplined. I am grateful to my parents for instilling in us the proper attitude and manners one should have as a person, but my sister seemed to struggle with such formalities and often disliked our parents for it, frequently escaping from their discipline. My parents, particularly my father, never overlooked such behavior from my sister, and I believe his attitude towards her was quite strict. Perhaps because of this, even as an adult, my sister still feels intimidated by our father. The sight of our family arguing as soon as my sister returned home, especially with my father catching her trying to flee, caused her friends to become uneasy. In front of them, our parents loudly scolded her for her mistreatment of her grandchildren, including this incident.
How could you go on a trip leaving a 9-year-old and an infant behind? What were you thinking? You say Susan is responsible, but she's still a child. To dump the care of a baby on such a child. Are you even a mother? And it's not just this time, it seems you've left Susan alone to fend for herself many times before, without even preparing meals. Do you even realize you're a mother? If your husband is often away on business trips, it's all the more your responsibility to look after the home and children, isn't it? As my parents revealed more about my sister's behavior, her friends were puzzled, asking, "What do you mean, and didn't you say you were leaving the kids with your parents?" However, witnessing the anger of our parents, the sheepishness of my sister, and the frightened look of my niece peeking out from behind us, they seemed to realize the truth in my parents' words. Now, everyone present was glaring at my sister. As if she couldn't stand the atmosphere, my sister continued to make excuses while trembling and turning pale. It's not like that. I was told my husband was at home yesterday. Lies. Then how do you explain everything up to now?
That's. While this exchange was ongoing, the police arrived. "Excuse us, we are from Central Police Station. We received a report last night suggesting your daughters might be subjected to abuse. Could we discuss this matter in more detail?" Oh, wait. Eventually, without much resistance, my sister was taken to the police station. After being taken in, my sister underwent questioning and, being her first offense, was released with just a stern warning. The person who appeared as my sister's guarantor was her husband. It seems our parents had contacted him last night, and he had rushed back from a business trip. While we were taking care of my niece and her siblings at my sister's house, waiting for their return, my sister and her visibly angry husband came back in the evening. Upon seeing her father, my niece joyfully hugged him.
"Daddy. Welcome home." "Susan, I'm home. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely. I'm sorry."
He hugged my niece tightly, as if making up for the lost time. After putting the children to bed, my husband and I, along with our parents and my sister and her husband, sat down for a serious discussion. When her husband demanded that she tell everything, my sister, still pale, looked down and made excuses, saying, "I wanted a change of pace because of parenting stress."
Even though it seems like you're always hunting for brand name bags. It's the talk of the neighborhood, you know?
What? There was no way my sister was mentally exhausted from childcare. Convinced that she was lying, I shared information I had heard from my colleagues. I recounted not only this incident but also episodes of my sister doing as she pleased while her husband was away, as a form of retaliation for her past actions. Hearing this, her husband became furious. "You've been doing such things while I was gone." To prove the truth of my accusations, A quick search of the house revealed a stash of brand-name goods hidden in the back of my sister's closet. So, what Maple said is true. Faced with the evidence of the brand-name goods, my sister nodded in resignation. According to her confession, she had lied to her husband about the children attending expensive lessons to receive a large sum of money. Moreover, she often neglected the children's care, not only when she was out but also when she was at home.
I'm so disappointed in you. You always said you were managing the housework and childcare properly. Let's get a divorce.
Having had enough of her, her husband declared his intention to divorce her. Having no excuses left for her misdeeds, my sister quietly accepted the divorce. She couldn't let go of her pride in their mansion, pleading with her husband, "Please leave the house to me." Her husband, who had no interest in the house, agreed to transfer it to her in exchange for a reduction in her share of the other assets. However, the story of what happened spread among the neighbors and her circle of friends, tarnishing her reputation as a woman who mistreated her children and was abandoned by her husband. No one was willing to help my sister. She faced scorn when she went shopping, was rejected when she tried to find part-time work in the neighborhood, and became completely isolated. Eventually, unable to step outside her home and mentally deteriorating, my sister sought help from our parents. However, they had disowned her at the time of her divorce and refused to have any involvement with her. Abandoned by everyone, my sister now lives miserably in the once prized mansion that has turned into a house of clutter. On the other hand, her husband had been seeking to change his work style for the sake of the family. He had applied for a transfer to a department without business trips, hoping to spend more time with his family, and it seemed likely his request would be granted soon. Deciding he couldn't leave the children with their mostly absent mother, he took custody. A decision our parents and I fully supported. The children, especially fond of their father, were thrilled to live with him, saying, "We get to live with Daddy." Without any allies, my sister was left despondent. After the divorce, my brother-in-law and the children moved close to our home. To fill the void of the past lack of interaction, my husband and I sometimes play with the children. Since the incident, the niece has become attached to us, and we occasionally look after her and her sibling when my brother-in-law works late.
The baby is growing up healthy and is at a very cute age. Watching the children grow up, we spend our days feeling happy and fulfilled.
My name is Allie Smith. I'm 30 years old. My husband, Tom, is a 33-year-old office worker. I experienced stage 0 breast cancer 8 years ago. And now, the breast cancer is back. Sis, you're finally getting discharged tomorrow, huh? I've had a recurrence of breast cancer and am currently hospitalized after undergoing a mastectomy of my left breast. Sis? It's really a shock to lose a breast as a woman. I was prepared, but still. The surgery was successful, but my heart is still heavy. Then, my husband, Tom, came in triumphantly. My husband, who suddenly tells me he wants a divorce while I'm hospitalized for breast cancer.
I'm going to remarry because my lover is pregnant. Move back to your parents' house once you're done with the surgery. The apartment we're living in is mine.
I laughed at Tom, who knew nothing, idiot. You know nothing, do you? I revealed a certain truth to him. Then, he went crazy, then my whole plan is ruined. What's going to happen now? There have been various things leading up to this.
Thank you for everything today. No, thank you.
How about it? Did you find any good places? I have another viewing tomorrow, but my heart is set on the last property we saw. I was working at my father's real estate agency at the time. I was assigned to handle Tom when he came looking for a place. That concludes our explanation. Please read the contract thoroughly, and if you're satisfied, sign it and stamp it. This. Saying that, Tom handed me a small note. I don't want us to stop seeing each other after today. When I got home and opened the note, it contained Tom's email address and phone number. Honestly, I could have gotten that information from the documents, but that would be a breach of privacy. I also felt sad that we wouldn't see each other again. Why can't we date? You hate me, don't you? If you tell me what's wrong, I'll try to fix it. After all, we've already been on what feels like 5 dates. I can't accept that we can't date. It's not like that. I don't dislike Tom at all. In fact, I have a good feeling about her. Then, I've decided not to marry anyone. Why? Did you commit a crime? Or if you're just looking for an excuse to reject me, I don't mind if you just turn me down clearly.
It's not that. I think you wouldn't be happy if you married me. If you're going to dodge the issue with such vague words, then forget it.
Tom turned his back in anger. This is fine, this is the right choice. Even so, I can't lie to my own feelings.
Tom!
When I called out, Tom turned around. He looked like he was hoping I would call him back. He probably wanted a proper explanation. I had breast cancer 3 years ago. There's a high chance it could come back. That's why I might not be able to look after you for the rest of my life. Having a sick person in the family is the hardest on the family members. I don't want to put you through that. Also, due to chemotherapy, my ovarian function has declined, and it's been said it would be difficult for me to have children. I think it's rare to find a woman who brings so little to a marriage. That's why I can't date you. It's because I like you. I might not be able to make Allie happy. But if I marry you, I'll be happy. I like you, no matter what. What does it matter if you're sick, or if we don't have children? My happiness is walking through life together with you. I don't wish for anything else. Let's trust in Tom's broad-mindedness and kindness. With such a strong declaration, he'll surely stay unshaken, no matter what happens. Did you go to the hospital? When he came home from work, the first thing Tom asked was that. For over a month, I've had many days when I felt unwell. Yeah, I went for a checkup. It's breast cancer. It's been 8 years since the last time, but now it's stage 2. I have to have surgery on my breast.
Is that so? We've been married for 5 years, so I thought maybe it wouldn't come back, but you never know. Surgery means it can be cured, right? Then let's look on the bright side, let's be positive.
I was worried about how Tom would react, but I was relieved that he took it more brightly than expected. So, you're going to be hospitalized, huh? When? I'll be hospitalized a week from now, and the stay is for 10 days. Then maybe I should make lunch for you every day. Hospital food is bland and not very tasty, right? I wouldn't know since I've never been hospitalized. Tom was good at cooking. I'm technically a stay-at-home wife, but on days when Tom comes home early, he cooks dinner.
That's it. I'll make lunch for both of us and we can eat together during the hospital's dinner time. I'm gonna visit every day.
Tom's cheerfulness was a saving grace.
The surgery went well.
When I woke up, my sister Kelly was there for me. Since our parents couldn't take time off work, she came in their place. Kelly, what about your job? I was relieved to hear my voice come out clearly. I had no memory after being anesthetized, and the surgery was already over. Anesthesia is amazing, I realized again.
I'm what you'd call a freeloader, living off my parents' money at home, a royal freeloader.
Kelly was trying to turn everything into a joke.
I'll come every day to keep you company and kill time. Write down a list of any magazines or books you want. Nights in the hospital are long, and it's tough to pass the time. Sure, there's always a TV now, but smartphones are banned and it's boring.
The anesthesia had worn off, and my head was starting to clear up. It had been a long time since Kelly and I had such a long conversation.
Hey, Allie, you're looking good. Kelly came too, huh? That must be reassuring for you.
Tom also stopped by after work, but he didn't bring the lunch I was secretly hoping for. He stayed for about 10 minutes, maybe.
It seems like Allie is in good spirits, and you sisters have a lot to catch up on after so long. So, I'll leave you to it.
What? Tom left shortly after arriving. I'm gonna go buy something to drink. What would you like, sis? Kelly quickly changed the subject. I still couldn't move much. Could you get me some tea, please? I sent Kelly off with that request, but she didn't return for nearly an hour. I started to get worried. Kelly came back, but without any drinks. Her face was slightly pale. You were gone for a while. Did you go to the cafeteria and eat something? What? What's with the scared look? Did you see a ghost or something? I just can't keep it to myself. What are you talking about? Tom is cheating. What? I went down to the first floor to buy a drink. That's when I saw Tom with a young woman, talking in front of the parking lot. When I was listening to their conversation, it sounded like they were dating. No way. Are you sure you didn't mistake someone else for him? I wish that were the case. I recorded it on impulse. Want to listen? My feelings were torn between not wanting to hear it and needing to know. Kelly didn't wait for my response and started playing the recording. When is your wife getting discharged? I was told she'd be in the hospital for 10 days. Then, let me go to your house during that time and take care of everything. I want to look after you. Huh, Sarah, you're quite domestic. You don't look the part, though.
Stop it. What's that supposed to mean? But, making you happy is what makes me happiest. Ever since I joined the company, I've had feelings for you. The shock when I found out she was married was unbearable. It makes me happy just to hear you say that, even though I'm 10 years older.
I have a thing for older men. The moment I saw you when I first joined the company, I knew she was the one. But, it seems like I met you in the wrong order. If it had been before you met your wife, you would have chosen me, right?
Of course. I've realized since dating you, Sarah, that I prefer someone healthy. Allie was always tired and bedridden even before her recurrence was discovered. A marriage without communication is just boring. I wanted to cherish our mealtime conversations, but in the end, I was cooking and eating alone.
They say conversation is the best spice. What would happen if she knew I was here? Would she get jealous? I wonder. Allie is so oblivious, I doubt she suspects I have a lover at all. It doesn't matter if she finds out, actually. But, there's something that makes it necessary for her to know. Tom's mind must be racing with what Sarah's insinuating.
I'm pregnant. What?
Remember, we went to a hotel after that drinking party? Oh, when I was completely drunk. It's from that night. Can you even be sure? We've been together since then. Women just know these things. You're going to divorce your wife and marry me, right? There was a moment of silence. What answer would Tom give? Maybe the time has come. I'll divorce Allie. Above all, I'm happy that we're having a child. I'm grateful you got pregnant. At this point, I stopped her. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm sorry, you didn't want to hear this. It's not your fault, Kelly. Thanks, actually. Without this, I might never have realized. I lost all respect for Tom on the day of my surgery. Moreover, bringing his mistress to the hospital where his wife is admitted. Sis, are you really clueless about this woman Tom is with? From the conversation, it's clear she's from Tom's company. Haven't you faced any harassment until now? I have absolutely no clue. But it's only a matter of time before the woman who's pregnant demands a divorce, right? Whether she's really pregnant is another matter. It's like the ultimate weapon for a mistress who wants her lover to leave his wife. Tom, too, would say he's divorcing because of the situation with his mistress. That's a typical line from men who cheat. Maybe we should talk about it once? As I was lost for words, Kelly said, "Sis, lend me the keys to your apartment. I'm going to install a recorder there right now. The more evidence we have, the better it'll be for the divorce court." Kelly was already talking as if my divorce from Tom was a done deal. I didn't want to hurt myself anymore, but I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to hear Tom's true feelings. I handed Kelly the keys to my apartment. The next day, Tom came to visit me after work. Having heard their conversation the day before, I couldn't look him straight in the eye. "Is there anything you need? If there's anything you want me to bring, just request it." Would he go back to our home, where his mistress is, after this? How can he maintain such an unchanged smile, keeping pregnancy and divorce a secret? This is my suggestion. Why don't you stay at your parents' place for a while after you're discharged? I know Kelly has been updating me about your condition, but it would be safer, right? Imagining his mistress confidently staying in my apartment made me feel nauseous. He must be trying to distance himself from me. You look pale today. Are you feeling ill? Want something to drink? Is there anything in the fridge? Hearing these kind words, it's hard to believe he's really cheating. I knew it was camouflage not to get caught, but I still didn't want to believe it. The image of Tom, always a gentleman in front of me, was getting distorted. "Tom, aren't you inconvenienced?" I decided to probe him. "You are good at cooking but not so good at tidying up, right? Clothes left where they're taken off, things left open. Isn't our house turning into a mess? Once I'm discharged, cleaning will be the first order of business." "No, it's okay, Allie. You don't need to worry about that. I'll come again tomorrow." Tom left after less than 10 minutes that day. Then, for a week, Tom didn't come to visit me. Even though my discharge was approaching. I thought it might be time to retrieve the recorder. "Do you want to listen, sis?" I was scared, but knew it was better to face reality. The partner hints at pregnancy and divorce. I've edited it down to just the concerning conversations. Okay? "Hey, after you divorce your wife, are we going to live in this room? It's a pretty nice condo, spacious and must have been expensive. Are you still paying the mortgage? This place has been Allie's since before we got married. Wow, is your wife some rich heiress or something? Allie's dad runs a real estate business and owns several properties. This condo was a gift from her father. But no matter how nice the house is, I don't want to live in a house where you lived together. Let's sell this condo and use the money to build our love nest. We can buy stylish furniture and create a comfortable environment. Just thinking about it excites me. Moving means we'll have to ask someone for help, right? I can't lift heavy things since I'm pregnant. But are you sure? I've never checked if I can sell this place. Don't be so pessimistic. If you've been married for 5 years, it becomes joint property, right? Even if you split it with the wife, it would still sell for a lot. This prime location condo must have been worth millions. This part was about the condo Allie lives in. What comes next might be even more upsetting. What more could they possibly talk about? Moreover, this conversation took place in my home. Isn't this just encouraging Sarah, the mistress? Why do you need so much money? Can't it wait until after you sell the condo? It's not like you need to buy anything right away. You don't understand women at all, Tom. That's why you're not popular. Wouldn't you be happier if I always looked beautiful? Look. I have appointments at the beauty salon and nail salon this week, and there are clothes I want to buy. Why are you acting like you don't have money? You don't need to pay the mortgage, right? You should have more disposable income than most. Well, there are expenses. Right, you spend it on your car? I don't quite get it, but you're customizing it, right? I bought an old car and am customizing it to my liking. Tinkering with cars and bikes is my hobby. So, you're not going to buy it for me? You already have plenty of bags, don't you? This is the new collection. I hate the thought of being the only one behind. Even so, didn't I just buy you a watch last month? To date a younger woman, you need money. Don't you understand that? All right. Sarah, you really know how to ask for things. I'll stop here. You probably don't want to hear any more lovey-dovey stuff. I had never heard Tom sound so smitten. Is this the real Tom? Next, there's a recording of Sarah talking on the phone inside the house. you'll see her true colors. She lived in a surprisingly spacious condo, Tom. Not exactly a goldmine, but selling the condo could bring in a good price. Even if I got half, that's like $1 million. What? Pregnant? That's obviously a lie. Who would willingly have a child with a man 10 years older? Just say I had a miscarriage at the right time, most men believe that. He's totally focused on me, so I'll use him as much as I can. You know, my plain office worker persona is just for show. I'm testing how many old men I can charm at the company. Of course, it's all for my boyfriend's sake. What? Spending money elsewhere? Of course, I am. At 23, worth of being office worker needs to be upgraded. I'm gathering designer goods now to elevate myself. Kelly stopped the recording there. I was speechless. Sis, it's better to act fast. First, make sure the condo is secured in a way that you don't lose out. We can't let this outrageous mistress have her way. And on this day, just before my discharge, my husband said, I'm remarrying because my mistress is pregnant. Move back to your parents' house after your surgery. Next to him stood Sarah, the mistress whose voice I had only heard. The condo we're living in is mine, he claimed.
Idiot. You know nothing, do you? The one leaving will be you.
That condo has been our joint property for the past 5 years we've lived there. I don't want all of it, just split it.
What are you talking about?
Are you stupid? Tom hasn't paid a cent for that condo.
If you say you've been paying a loan for 5 years, maybe your claim could stand. But that condo was a gift from my father. And I lived there before we got married. It was given to me by my father. That makes it an exception to joint property. You don't even know this simple fact and just going along with what that woman says. Then what am I supposed to do now?
Tom panicked.
The condo is already being prepared for sale. Tom has no right to live there. If he enters without permission, he'll be arrested for trespassing. Thinking everything will go your way is a huge mistake.
So, you knew about me and Sarah?
I doubt the nerve of a man who can live normally with his mistress in the house while his wife is hospitalized for breast cancer. Wait, Tom, that's not what we agreed on.
Sarah didn't expect things to turn out this way. Still so naive.
If the condo can't be sold, how will you get the money? There's a child on the way. No house, no money, that's fraud. Your pregnancy is a lie, right? The ultimate weapon to catch a man? It didn't have to be Tom. If you're going to trick someone, at least choose someone high up in the company. What's the point in deceiving Tom? If you're going to do sugar dating, aim higher.
I fought back just as hard. I've been fighting a disease. Grateful for ditching such petty lies and greed.
It's pathetic to be a sore loser, isn't it? It must hurt to have your husband stolen by a younger woman. But isn't it just natural? Neglecting your husband because you're not feeling well leads to this outcome. You haven't been meeting his needs at night, have you? Then, isn't it understandable that he'd cheat? What benefit did he get from marrying you? Can't have children, and never know when you'll fall ill again. Should he live only for you? Of course, he'll say sweet things when you get married. Those words from Tom weren't lies at that time. But as time passes, it's impossible to stay at the same temperature.
Please let him go. Sarah wasn't being defiant, rather she was speaking on Tom's behalf. It could make one mistakenly think Sarah genuinely loves Tom. So, Sarah, you're gonna stay with me, right? Even if it means starting in a small apartment with the 3 of us, including the baby in your belly. That's what you mean, right?
Huh? What are you misunderstanding? I was just passing along what you have been complaining about to your wife. After all, you're worthless to me now. Might as well spill everything and clear the air.
What about the money, then? Tom, even at this point, without any concern for his wife's health, brought up money. He must be really desperate for money. I don't care about that. It was Tom's goodwill, wasn't it? That's because you said we'd get half from selling the condo, anticipating a lot of money coming in. We even had a real estate agent confirm it could sell for $2 million. So I believed that. I was shocked to hear how far the conversation had gone. They wanted to sell the condo at any cost to cash in. Don't expect any sense from a 23-year-old woman. Everything I said was a shot in the dark.
Please! Allie, can you lend me the money from selling the condo?
Suddenly, I became the target. Tom looked as if he was about to kneel, completely cornered.
After doing something this terrible, you have the nerve to ask now. When I was down with a recurrence of breast cancer, you were off making a mistress. I'll be filing for alimony, you know. Good for you, Sarah is pregnant. You wanted kids, right? Well, it's a fantasy pregnancy anyway. But, looking at things now, it seems you and Sarah are done for, aren't you okay? After all, Sarah has a younger, more handsome boyfriend.
Tom's complexion changed. Sarah, really? His voice became sugary when addressing Sarah, which was frankly creepy. As if he believed he was getting younger.
Who knows, but that's not your concern, is it?
Then, at least pay me back the money, that's all I ask. Who knows what will happen? Sarah, you have all these expensive brands, but did you really need to go into debt to buy them? Did you know I was made a guarantor for your debts? I was astounded by his foolishness. Didn't he understand that under no circumstances should one become a guarantor for debts? Was he that blinded by Sarah?
Anyway, I'm moving out of the condo today. Tom, you better start looking for a new place soon.
We were going to live together, weren't we?
Have I not been clear? I find no attraction in a penniless Tom.
Sarah left the hospital room after saying that. Where did her confident face from when she arrived at the hospital go? Tom was left in a daze. I don't know how much debt Sarah racked up, but it's clear she won't be paying it herself. That's why Tom is stunned.
We're getting a divorce. And I'll be filing for alimony. People who succumb to temptation and pleasure once will do it again.
I pushed Tom away without a shred of sympathy. But, I do want to thank you for marrying me. For choosing to marry a woman who might not be able to have children, who had a risk of breast cancer recurrence. I needed to say that. Your parents came to visit yesterday, didn't they? Ah, Kelly, you were out then. I had returned to my parents' home after being discharged. The condo found a buyer, and my father plans to give me another one. It's good to have a wealthy real estate agent as a father. See, Tom ends up penniless and kicked out. But that doesn't excuse what I've been through. I involved a lawyer for the alimony, and suddenly Tom's parents came. They paid the alimony in full on behalf of Tom. They just kept apologizing. Isn't Tom ashamed to make his parents do such a thing? It's really appalling. Thinking back on yesterday's scene, it pains my heart too. So, what happened between Tom and that mistress, Sarah? They're done for. Sarah was only after the money from selling the condo. She wouldn't glance at a penniless Tom. After all, Tom's company is full of middle-aged men. Sarah targeted the company from the start. They weren't planning to hire female employees, but Sarah forcefully attended an interview, charmed the interviewer, and got specially hired. Her ability to manipulate older men at her young age is something else. Well, in 3 or 4 years, her youth won't sell anymore. Maybe she'll marry that boyfriend of hers, what was it, Pippi? In the end, things went exactly as Sarah wanted. She squeezed everything she could out of Tom, even making him a guarantor for her debts, a total victory. Now, Tom is running from debt collectors. There have been collection calls at his work, and he's even been ambushed outside, leading him to quit his job. I heard this from Tom's parents yesterday. A year has passed since then. A year was enough time to heal the wounds of sorrow. At least for me.
Wow, sis, you look beautiful. You really look great in dresses, probably because you have that exotic look.
Kelly, maybe it's time for you to think about settling down too. I've had the luxury of having 2 weddings after all. I still want to enjoy myself for a while. But I had no idea you and that nurse were together. When did that start? He took care of me during my hospital stay and even after I started outpatient visits, always encouraging me with positive words. Being a nurse, he must have faced the end of life before. Yet he said he didn't want to lose me. Why did you keep it a secret? Romance between a nurse and a patient is considered taboo. So we really kept our love quiet.
I see. But I'm glad you've recovered. After such a breakup, it's great that you met someone even better. And you're pregnant too. Yes. I never thought I could get pregnant. I had resigned myself to the idea it wouldn't happen for me, so the joy was even greater. My new husband has brought so much happiness. With renewed spirits, I took my first step down the aisle.
Stay out of the way, old hag. Just spend Christmas there. It seems I was kicked out of the house by my son's wife, who I had invited in because she wanted to spend the end of year together. I need to tell my son about her true nature somehow. I'll expose her for who she really is, no matter what it takes. I refuse to be family with someone like her. My name is Michelle. I'm 72 years old and live with my son. He's approaching 40 but is still single. My husband passed away 3 years ago. My son used to live alone, but he moved back home when it became more convenient due to a job change. Our house is a single-story home. It looks almost new but was actually renovated not too long ago. It used to be a shabby old place, but after years of wear and tear, my late husband decided to remodel it. Thanks to the renovation, it's now comfortable and beautiful. Just hearing this, you'd think my husband decided to remodel the house out of consideration for the family's comfort. But in reality, it wasn't like that at all. Instead, he had been a source of trouble for many years. He was a typical stubborn old man, free-spirited outside the house. At home, he acted like he was the center of everything, and would scold me terribly if I ever deviated from his expectations. "Who do you think feeds you?" was his constant refrain. But outside, he wasted money on gambling and other vices, leaving barely anything for the household. We barely scraped by. Yet, he still acted superior in front of me and my son. There were broken promises of family outings because of his gambling, and he often missed school events. I could have divorced him and raised my son alone, but I didn't want to give up. My son seemed to feel the same, never showing tears in front of his father. When my husband died, he left behind a small inheritance, this renovated house, and our precious son. Having my son, I don't feel lonely. He's always been kind, the opposite of his father. In the best light, he's kind and always thinks of others, unable to ignore those in trouble. But on the downside, he's self-sacrificing and struggles to express his own opinions. He tends to be easily swayed by stronger personalities. "I'll never be like my father," he'd say, but he's often put himself at a disadvantage to help others in need, ending up in thankless roles. Once, he'd lend notes to schoolmates but wouldn't get them back, which affected his own grades. Another time, he joined a sports club he wasn't interested in just because a friend asked him. I had to join because my friend said he wouldn't know anyone else there if I didn't. Like this, even in situations where my son ended up in such a role, his kindness was always at the forefront. I'm happy that he's grown into a kind man, but his excessive kindness worries me. I always fear that one day, it might get him into serious trouble. He says his current workplace has a good atmosphere and it's easy to work there, but it seems like it's mostly men, and there's hardly any gossip. As for me, now that my husband is gone, I'd be alone if my son married. I'd be lonely, but as a mother, I'd be happy for him. Then one day, he made a sudden confession. I've promised to marry someone. I want you to meet her. I was overjoyed. My son, nearing 40, works mostly with men, living at home with his mother. If you just look at his situation other than his personality, he's the type who would usually be avoided first. It's a miracle a woman who wants to marry him appeared. If things keep progressing smoothly and my son ends up marrying this woman, of course, he will eventually leave my side. I'll miss him, but his happiness is what matters most as a mother.
If you chose her, I'd love to meet her. What's she like? I met her at a mixer a colleague took me to 6 months ago. She's earnest, strong, and resilient. I want to build a family with her. That's why I want you to meet her.
As he talked about her, his eyes sparkled like I had never seen before. I knew she must be special. I looked forward to meeting the woman he had confidently chosen. Then came the promised day. It was the day my son would bring home the girlfriend he's seeing.
Mom, this is Jessica, the woman I've been talking about. We're considering getting married.
But the woman my son brought home didn't introduce herself or even greeted. She just stood there. At first glance, she gave off the impression of someone haughty and aloof. Honestly, I couldn't imagine her being the type my son would fall for. After that, she continued determinedly ignoring as if nothing had happened. She barely greeted me and scrutinized every corner of our house. She made a face when she tasted the coffee I offered. Every time she touched something, she'd pull out a sanitizing wipe and clean it, a string of odd behaviors. It was our first meeting. Especially with someone who might become your mother-in-law, this was clearly inappropriate. I've always dreamed of doting on my son's wife like my own daughter as my son was my only child, but that dream seemed to shatter in an instant. Frankly, I found her unpleasant even in this short time, and I didn't want to get too close to her, even if she's my son's choice and my future daughter-in-law. It seemed she felt the same, as days passed without any further contact. After she left, I confronted my son.
You're serious about her and even want to marry her, right? Based on today, I just don't see her charm. She's shy around new people. But she's an attractive woman, strong and kind, having overcome many hardships.
From his detailed account, they met at a mixer set up by his colleague. Sitting next to my son, she went on about all the hard and sad things she'd experienced all the time. Normally, you wouldn't feel good for someone who brags about their misfortunes at a mixer, but he felt I'm sorry for her and want to rescue her. That is my son. Their relationship started with his determination to make her happy. Despite how they met, it was just like my son, but taking it to marriage was another story. Given her behavior today and their unusual start, she seemed like a complicated person. Her behavior might seem endearing at this stage. But I had a hunch that living with her would be challenging. Then, suddenly, my son announced he was moving out. I suspected this had something to do with her. When I thought of him living with that woman the other day, I had mixed feelings. Then, he muttered something unexpected.
I didn't think she'd go ahead and do it now. She said she wanted to wait until we were both ready, to make it a special day.
Do what? You mean?
Our marriage. We were supposed to decide the date and we are both ready to live together.
It sounded unbelievable, but apparently, my son's girlfriend couldn't wait for marriage. Between my first impression, the episodes my son shared, and now this rash action, I was filled with anxiety.
I'm worried. Are you sure everything's okay?
It's fine, she's a kind woman. Oh, I got a message from Jessica. She said you can choose our wedding gift from this list.
When I checked the list she sent, everything on it cost several $1,000s. It's not an amount I can easily afford, even for my son's wedding. It's audacious of her to act so rudely when we first met, decided marriage without my son knowing, and then ask for such expensive home appliances. It was surprising that my son would choose such a person as his life partner, but wanting to celebrate their new beginning, I decided to gift them a state-of-the-art air conditioner, one of the items she wanted.
Jessica wants this air conditioner, so I give it to you too as my wedding gift. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate you listening to her request.
It wasn't cheap, but I splurged, thinking of my son and his loved one's new life. Despite getting her the air conditioner she wanted, I never received a thank you or any message from son's wife. Is this how people are these days? Days passed without any contact from my son or his wife, Jessica. They lived in an apartment in the next town over, less than an hour's drive from my house, but I hadn't heard a peep from them. I thought it wouldn't be too hard to drop by, but they must have been busy with work and their new married life. Not wanting to intrude, I refrained from reaching out, but then a situation arose where I had to contact them. It was my brother's funeral, my son's uncle. While we hadn't been in touch much recently, he had always been fond of my son since he was little. I wanted them to attend the funeral, even if they couldn't make it to the wake. It had been a while since we last spoke, so I decided to call. But no matter how many times I tried, I couldn't get through to my son's cell phone. The next day, I got a message saying the call couldn't be connected, like I was blocked. My son, who was always so gentle and never missed a chance to stay in touch, blocking my calls. It was hard to believe, but there was nothing I could do, and funerals don't wait. My son and his wife didn't attend, and my brother's funeral went on without them. Half a year later, out of the blue, I got a call from Jessica.
Hey, I was thinking you might be lonely around Christmas. My husband has a middle school reunion around the same time and he wants to let loose a bit. Can we spend with you?
She didn't mention the wedding gift, the missed funeral, or the fact that my calls were blocked. Just like that, she talked about spending Christmas at my place. Although it was a shock for me, it might not have been a big deal to her. She seemed to assume I wouldn't refuse. I was apprehensive about staying under the same roof as her, but I longed to see my son, so I accepted her proposal.
Sure, that's fine. I'm looking forward to seeing you both after such a long time.
And so, they came to my house for Christmas. When they arrived, something felt off. The two of them were constantly together. But it was not in a loving or friendly way. They were just always together. Even when my son went to the bathroom or to get something from a room, Jessica followed him. At first, I thought she might have something to do in the same direction, but that didn't seem to be the case. It's hard to describe, but from her gaze and movements, it almost felt like she was monitoring my son, making sure he didn't do anything strange. When I got up to make tea, I caught a glimpse of my son's face and was shocked. He was looking down, avoiding eye contact with her. I couldn't understand why they were acting like this. But the reason behind their behavior would soon become clear. In the evening, my son left for his middle school reunion. Feeling awkward alone with Jessica, I decided to do some cleaning. I was vacuuming as usual when suddenly the vacuum stopped working.
What? It was working fine yesterday.
Then, with a loud bang and a forceful shove, I found myself toppled over. At that moment, I couldn't comprehend what was happening. The vacuum and I were thrown outside into the yard. Thankfully, I was wearing thick socks, but with the snow piled up outside, I was at risk of freezing. Who would do such a thing? A stranger? A robber? As I tried to get up and saw who was there, I was stunned to see it was Jessica.
You're just right for spending Christmas there.
Wait, what? Jessica, do you even realize what you're doing?
Shut up, you old hag.
I'm looking forward to having fun now that he's not around. It would be the perfect night if it weren't for you getting in the way.
Saying this, Jessica started talking on the phone with someone. From the name she was calling, it seemed like she was talking to a man. The way she was sweetly talking in a voice I've never heard her use before made it clear. She was planning to meet her lover. From the bits of conversation I could barely hear, it seemed she was planning to use this house for dating, pretending to be her own house. Indeed, my house is newly renovated, and as a minimalist, I don't have many belongings. But who would have thought that someone would use my mother-in-law's house, where their husband grew up, as a place to cheat, pretending it's their own home? She took advantage of her husband going to a reunion and kicked me, her mother-in-law, out of the house, claiming I was in her way, and even pushed me out into the snowy garden. Well, if that's how it's going to be, I have a plan of my own. I dressed in an old pair of shoes and a coat I found in the storage and set out to fight back. First, I doubted my son knew about this affair. Even my son, who's as gentle as they come, would surely take some action if he knew his beloved wife was cheating so blatantly. I had to contact him immediately and let him see the affair happening in our house. But my calls were blocked on his phone. As I pondered over what to do, I remembered someone. It was a childhood friend of my son. They had been close up to college and continued to meet for meals even after graduating. This friend had inherited a deli from his parents in the local shopping district. I might get some information there. Feeling like clutching even at straws, I went to the deli, only to find his parents there. Probably because he was at the reunion too. I asked them about the location of the reunion. I learned it was at a small tavern in the same shopping district. I rushed there, hoping to spot my son easily in such a small place. Luckily, I saw him returning to the tavern after buying something at a supermarket. I quickly approached him.
I'm so glad I found you. Jessica kicked me out of the house. She's planning to spend time there with some man. I overheard her phone conversation. Do you know anything about this?
What? Jessica's cheating? No way!
Hearing this, my son immediately left the reunion and headed for our house. I offered to go with him, but he insisted it was too dangerous as we don't know what Jessica would do and what kind of person the man might be. I took refuge in a nearby hotel, leaving the matter to my son. The next day, when I returned home, I found Jessica beaten up and lying naked in the garden.
Damn it, you old hag. Don't you care about helping your daughter-in-law? I can't even get into the house. What kind of upbringing did you give your son?
I couldn't believe my gentle son would beat his wife and leave her in the garden. Entering the house, I found my son drinking coffee.
Hey, Jessica was naked in the garden. What happened?
I don't know. She was fighting with her affair partner last night. It's none of my business now. She's going to be a stranger to me.
When I was taking refuge in a hotel, my son had stormed into the scene where his wife, Jessica, was cheating with her lover. Thinking it would serve as evidence if something happened, he took photos of the lover's face and even recorded the confrontation. I was impressed by his calmness in such a bizarre situation. From the recording, it was clear that the lover, caught off guard by my husband's return, lashed out in anger and even struck Jessica. It seemed like he stripped her of the expensive-looking branded clothes she was wearing, perhaps intending to sell them off. The recording captured everything, even these details. After the lover left, my son was the one who stopped Jessica from entering the house again.
I think you understand from the recording, but it's clear Jessica is not remorseful. She said she married me for money, or because I was convenient to use. And to top it off, she keeps saying her lover is her number one. So, I've got a place I need to go to, so I'm leaving Jessica's matters to you, Mom.
Leave it to me? What do you mean?
I didn't want to let someone like her into our house, so I didn't. If you want to let her in, I won't stop you.
With that, my son left. As for me, Jessica has put us through a lot of trouble up to this point. Even though she was likely beaten up by her angry lover, I think it's just desserts for her actions. I don't feel any obligation to help her out, so I decided to just leave her be. I had a pretty good idea of the situation from my son's photos and recordings, but to further clarify things, I decided to check the security camera footage as well. I'm glad I installed these cameras after hearing about a burglary at a relative's house. It was just in case, but it turned out to be a wise decision. It seems that neither Jessica, my son's wife, nor her lover realized that we had security cameras. They were behaving recklessly in someone else's house and even caused trouble. The footage captured by these cameras, coupled with the strange hat seen in the photos my son took, seemed oddly familiar. As I was pondering this, I noticed a commotion outside. The sound of the doorbell rang, and someone had come to visit. When I opened the door, there stood a police officer. It appeared that Jessica, playing the victim, had cried to the neighbors. Someone had reported to the police about an injured, naked woman in the garden.
I'm sorry for the disturbance. She seems to have gotten into some trouble, but neither my son nor I saw her get injured. We do have a security camera, so we can explain what kind of trouble it was.
I proceeded to show the police the footage and photos from last night's incident. Thankfully, the police understood that my son and I weren't involved. However, as police officers, they couldn't leave a woman injured and naked in the cold of winter. Jessica was taken away in a patrol car. Just as I remembered who the man in my son's ex-wife's affair was, my son returned.
Mom, I'm back. I just filed for divorce.
She's nothing to me now.
Divorce? What do you mean? Since we got married, Jessica would cry and make a scene whenever things didn't go her way. I tried to meet her expectations, but she started testing my patience. Her trump card was a divorce paper.
From what my son told me, he was completely enamored with Jessica and did everything to fulfill her wishes. However, Jessica exploited his feelings, behaving outrageously. And she used the threat of divorce to control him. I was speechless upon hearing this. However, I reconsidered and decided to share with my son what I had just remembered. He seemed to have a moment of realization and quickly stood up, urging me to follow him. We headed to the police station where Jessica was being held. My son and I went to the room where Jessica was being temporarily held for her protection.
Ted! I was waiting for you. I knew you would come to rescue me. You're my dear husband, after all. You wouldn't be so heartless as to ignore your wife in such a state.
What are you talking about? We're strangers now.
My mom and I just came to tell you something important, that's all. What? What do you mean? Is this some kind of bad joke? I understand if this old lady came to apologize for leaving me in the garden, but strangers?
Jessica probably thought I was there to apologize for leaving her outside and that Ted came to take back his beloved wife.
I've filed for divorce. I had a divorce paper which you had already filled out your part of the form, and I submitted it.
We're nothing to each other now.
What? How dare you do something like this, Ted? Remember when you filed the marriage certificate without telling me? It's not fair to do something to others that you don't want done to yourself, is it?
Jessica was speechless and dejected at Ted's logic, but I had something to add.
That man you brought home, he's a business owner, right? Yeah, he's a young and talented CEO of a beauty salon. He said he'd marry me, so I was dating him. But then, this happened. That man is actually an unemployed freeloader. It seems he did something terrible at a restaurant, and that's why he's jobless now.
I've always enjoyed social media and often browse through it. I see news and interesting stories, but lately, there's been no end to stories about outrageous behavior in restaurants going viral. When I saw him, I realized he was the same person at the center of these viral controversies that many people were talking about recently.
This guy was causing trouble by drinking directly from water pitchers and adding Tabasco sauce into them, right? I read that he recently got fired from his part-time job because of these antics. That's a lie! His profile had a long list of accomplishments. There's no way he, a CEO, would do such things. Just last week, he proposed to me with a bouquet of roses, saying he'd make me his wife soon. Well, that aside, there's a lot of damage he caused at my house when he was causing a ruckus. I could file a complaint for his disruptive behavior.
She truly believed he was a CEO and thought that by being with him, she'd become a CEO's wife. To add to her disillusionment, I decided to press on further.
There's a female executive at your workplace, right? She's an old friend of mine. What? You told my workplace about my affair? Of course not. I simply consulted my friend how I get along with my son's wife. Was there a problem? You know, you shouldn't do things in the first place if you're going to be embarrassed being seen doing them.
Jessica, my son's ex-wife, turned pale as one shocking revelation after another was revealed to her. Leaving her behind in that state, we exited the police station. Afterward, Jessica's workplace found out about the awful way she treated her mother-in-law and that her affair had led to her divorce. I heard from the friend that, as a long-standing veteran at her job, she was being considered for a promotion. However, due to her own actions, that opportunity dissolved. Her terrible behavior resulted in a toxic work environment, leading to her being transferred to a regional office. However, even at her new location, everyone was aware of the sordid details of her affair and its messy end, which caused her to become isolated there.
Why is everyone avoiding me? All I did was have a true love affair with a talented CEO. What, are they all jealous that I could have been a CEO's wife? Tell that friend of yours, the executive, to stop this ridiculous office bullying. You think being ostracized and floating aimlessly in your transferred location is all due to jealousy and bullying? I see you're quite optimistic in your thinking. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about your situation.
In the end, she found no place for herself at work and ultimately had to resign. To make matters worse, my son's ex-wife ended up homeless.
You know, even if she is your ex-wife, how do you expect her to get through this winter without a home? Telling a woman to shiver outside, isn't that heartless?
What are you talking about?
Who was it that suddenly threw my mother out into a snow-covered garden? In the first place, everything you say and do is just out of self-love and it's all wrong.
The apartment my son and his ex-wife lived in was his company housing for married employees. Due with the divorce, she was evicted. Despite everything, Jessica, stubborn and unwilling to give up, frequently stormed back to my son's place, shouting and demanding, even after being kicked out.
You're there, aren't you? How can you not reach out to help your own wife when she's in such trouble? Don't you have any kindness? Expecting kindness from others while ignoring your own actions? Is that how it works? Well, I guess it's pointless to explain.
Not satisfied with just going to my son's place, Jessica started showing up at my house too. I'm not free to deal with her antics, but she didn't stop at just coming to my home. She even started following me to the supermarket I frequently visit.
How can you just leave your daughter-in-law in this situation? Could you do the same to your own son? Your son abandoned his troubled wife like she was disposable. What kind of upbringing did you give him?
Abandoned?
Troubled wife? This situation is entirely the result of seeds you sowed yourself. Have you forgotten your own actions? I don't even think of you as a daughter-in-law anymore.
Each time she did this, the security system would be activated, or bystanders would call the police. As a result, she became known throughout the town as a person of interest. My son and I, unable to tolerate her persistence any longer, consulted with the police and obtained a restraining order against her. She now appears to be trying to find her next target by attending matchmaking parties. However, with no money, no job, and unable to present herself well, she's often turned away at the entrance. She's become somewhat of a notorious figure in certain circles for disrupting these events, making marriage unlikely for her. Finally, the relentless assaults from my son's ex-wife have ceased, and we are living in peace.
Mom, back then, I was out of my mind with all the things Jessica was saying to me. She cut me off from contacting home and screamed at me all day. But I've finally woken up. I'm really sorry for everything.
Since then, my son and I have been living together again. Whether he remarries or continues to stay with me, I'll be happy as long as he maintains his kindness and treats others well.
Oh, come on. You're calling this a financial support? It's hilarious that it's just this little. Given Tom's earnings, there should definitely be more room for generosity, but Yvonne is just too polite to say anything.
I see. It's indeed strange that the allowance Yvonne gives me is only $20 a month. In fact, I was later told by Yvonne herself that the amount she was supposed to send me was $2,600 a month. What happened to the difference, I wonder? But that's not all. Shockingly, amounts of money that I don't recognize have been withdrawn from my cash card. However, I have a good guess who might be behind this. I regret trusting her even a little and giving her my cash card. But when I think about Yvonne, I don't want to cause a fuss. Just as I was thinking this, Yvonne and Tom started to take action. And then, I confronted her about why she has been harassing me for so long. I'm Nora Kirk, a 60-year-old cook working in hospital food service. I had a daughter with my husband, whom I met in high school, but he passed away when our daughter was 2 years old. Overwhelmed with grief, it took me a while to recover. But I have my dear daughter Yvonne, so I couldn't stay down forever. Thinking this, I worked hard to make sure Yvonne wouldn't have to suffer. It's been over 30 years since my husband passed away. Yvonne is now working nobly as a nurse. I was worried about Yvonne, who is over 30 and not married yet, but she told me she couldn't be happy leaving me alone. Recently, it seems Yvonne has found a boyfriend. I was secretly hoping she would tell me about getting engaged soon. And just as I hoped, Yvonne told me she was proposed to by him. However, there was a shadow in Yvonne's expression. Wondering if there was a reason, I asked her.
What's wrong, Yvonne? You're about to get married, but you seem down.
Yvonne answered awkwardly.
You know, Mom. I wanted to live with you or at least live nearby after I got married, so we could be just like we've always been.
Yvonne started the conversation by talking about him and his family. His name is Tom. It seems he's an employee at a pharmaceutical company that visits the hospital where Yvonne works. However, Tom's mother is adamant about living with her son's wife. It appears she lost her husband 2 years ago and doesn't want to lose her only son as well. I can understand feeling lonely if she recently lost her husband, unlike me. Thinking this, I told Yvonne. You know, his mom might be feeling really lonely right now, wanting her son close. I kinda get it. But, being alone would be the same for you, Mom. Yvonne said, worried about me. Nevertheless, what's most important right now is Yvonne's happiness.
Don't worry about me. I'll be fine on my own. Just focus on being happy with him.
I reassured her, wanting Yvonne to feel at ease about her happiness. Some time passed, and Yvonne brought her fiance Tom to our home. Tom, with his bright and gentle personality, seemed like a very nice man. I felt reassured that he would make her happy. However, when I met Tom's mother and realized Yvonne would be living with her, I was shocked and worried for Yvonne. The meeting took place at Tom's family home. This house would become Yvonne's new home, where she would live from now on. Dressed in a new suit, I went with Yvonne to Tom's house, thinking this. Their house was bigger and more impressive than I imagined. Seeing the grand entrance, I involuntarily gasped. Given that she's from such a wealthy-looking family, she must be a person of much higher standing than me. Sensing my feelings, Yvonne eased my tension.
Mom, you don't need to be so nervous.
Just relax.
Right.
Sorry.
There's no point in me being nervous.
I replied with a smile, not wanting to worry Yvonne. Then, taking a deep breath, I pressed the doorbell. Tom greeted us at the door with a warm smile. We've been expecting you. Please, come in. He said, easing my tension somewhat. But then, seeing Tom's mother appear from behind him made me catch my breath. The woman seemed familiar, as if I had seen her somewhere before.
Nice to meet you. I'm Tom's mother, Sally.
Hearing that name, a woman I knew from the past came to mind.
Excuse me, by any chance, are you Sally Anderson from high school?
Eh?
Yes, my maiden name was Anderson, but who you might be.
Indeed, she was Sally, a woman from my high school days, 2 years older than me, and a member of the same club.
I'm Nora Kirk, went to same high school.
I responded, making an awkward face. Sally's expression suddenly turned stern as if she remembered who I was. Back in high school, Sally was particularly harsh on me. For reasons I never understood, seemingly holding a grudge and often being mean. However, Sally's stern face quickly softened.
Oh, Nora? We both changed our last names, so I didn't recognize you.
Sally said with a smile. It's been over 40 years since we graduated from high school, so she might not even remember being mean to me anymore. After the greetings at the entrance, we were led inside. There was a spacious guest room. Sally made some tea and then asked me, "Are you really okay with giving your daughter to us?" Being asked so directly if I was okay with giving away my daughter caught me off guard. But I knew I had to endure it for Yvonne's happiness.
Yes. I might have my shortcomings, but please take good care of her,
I said. Sally looked at me with a sharp expression and said in a condescending tone,
"Let me make this clear, Tom is the precious heir of this family.
So, his wife will have to follow my guidelines.
And what would those be?
Nothing difficult. Just don't go against what I've decided or neglect me, that's all.
Her expression gradually took on the look of that girl from high school. The fact that living together was a non-negotiable condition had already made me anticipate a strict household, but it seemed there might be even stricter conditions than I imagined. I started to worry about Yvonne's future. But that doesn't mean I can oppose her marriage. Because Tom is a good person, I decided to trust him completely and leave Yvonne in his care. Once Yvonne got married and I was left alone, I focused solely on my job. I wanted to stay healthy and not worry Yvonne with any health issues, even if I got sick. However, one day, something happened. The corn we ordered arrived at the cafeteria, but nobody was there because it was lunch break. A 66-pound bag of corn left at the entrance would always get a remark from the nurses. With no other choice, I decided to carry it to the storeroom myself.
"Here goes!"
I exclaimed, lifting it, only to feel a sharp pain in my back the moment I did. I hurriedly put the bag down but couldn't move from the spot. Enduring the pain, I managed to call out for help. My voice somehow reached outside the cafeteria, and a nurse rushed over to help. I was then taken to the examination room. It turned out I had thrown out my back. Years of standing and working had taken their toll on my already tall frame, and I had been suffering from back pain for a long time. I had to be hospitalized and remain at rest until I recovered. I had tried so hard not to worry Yvonne. Lying in the hospital bed, thinking about it made me feel pathetic. Then, that night, Yvonne came to the hospital. "Mom, are you okay? I got a call from your workplace and was surprised. But sorry for coming so late." "Oh, it's fine. You have your own family to look after. I'm sorry for worrying you. It's just a thrown-out back, I'll be fine," I replied, smiling to reassure Yvonne. But Yvonne, concerned for me, said,
Mom, you've been pushing yourself too hard raising me. It's my turn to take care of you. I can't be around because of work, but I'll send money to make sure you don't struggle financially. So, please take your time to rest and focus on healing your back.
I was truly touched by Yvonne's kindness. However, I wondered if Sally would approve of the financial help. "I appreciate the thought, but is your mother-in-law okay with it?"
"Yeah. I'll talk to her when I get home today.
It'll be fine." For now, Yvonne agreed to deposit the money into my account, so I told her where to find my bank card at home and asked her to take care of it. My back turned out to be more seriously injured than I thought, and my hospital stay became prolonged. Even after being discharged from the hospital, I couldn't move around as I wished, so I couldn't even go to the bank's ATM to withdraw the allowance I was receiving. While I was thinking about this, the intercom rang. When I answered through the monitor, it was Sally who had come. As I made my way to the entrance, leaning on walls for support, and opened the door, Sally looked at me with concern and said, "Oh, Nora. I'm sorry for making you strain yourself. Here, hold on to my shoulder, and I'll help you inside." No sooner had she said this than she placed my arm over her shoulder and helped me into the house. Caught off guard by her sudden kindness, she sat me down and softly spoke.
"Nora, it must be tough being alone, especially since Yvonne can't come because of work. But if there's anything you need, just let me know, okay?"
I felt a sense of unease with Sally suddenly being so nice, but I kept my composure. "No, it's me who should be sorry for the trouble my daughter, Yvonne, has caused by working late. But what brings you here today?" When I asked, Sally replied with a smug look. "Since Yvonne is busy, I've decided to bring you the monthly allowance myself." She then handed me two $10 bills. What is this money for?" I asked, dumbfounded, and Sally burst into laughter. "How funny. Isn't it sad to call it a financial support when it's just this much? Considering Tom's earnings, there should be more than enough, but Yvonne is being too reserved." "I see. It was indeed strange for my allowance to be only $20 a month. Yvonne should be able to give more from her own earnings without relying on Tom's salary. Then, Sally, more smugly than before, said,
"Since it's just $20, it would be a waste to pay a transfer fee. So, I've decided to bring it directly to you from now on. I'd like to contribute a bit myself, but I don't want to make you feel obliged. Instead, I'll help out with anything, like shopping or doing the laundry, so just tell me whenever you need anything."
Though I found it strange, I didn't want to cause any trouble, so I gratefully accepted Sally's offer. From that day, Sally started coming to our house daily, taking care of cleaning, laundry, and meal preparation. She seemed genuinely kind, different from her high school days. I began to open up to Sally. Since she offered to go shopping too, I entrusted her with my cash card. After dinner was ready, Sally would leave around 5 p.m. to go home. In the evening, as I was about to eat dinner alone, Yvonne called.
Mom, I'm sorry for not being able to contact you much.
It was the first time in a while I heard Yvonne's voice. I made sure to thank her for the allowance, even though it was small.
No, thank you for the allowance every month. Even $20 means a lot to me.
After I said this, there was a pause. Then, Yvonne responded with something unbelievable.
"What? I've been sending $2,600 every month. What? I've only been receiving $20 from your mother-in-law."
There was another silence. "Are you receiving it in person?" "Yes, I've been getting it directly from your mother-in-law every month." Yvonne sounded puzzled and then raised her voice in excitement.
"I talked to my family about the allowance and said I'd transfer it during my break, but my mother-in-law said she'd handle it for me."
"Could you put her on the phone, please? She's still there, right?" "Oh. She usually goes home by 5 p.m. like today."
"What? No, she tells me she's taking care of you every night and doesn't come home until late."
I was surprised by Yvonne's words. Why would Sally lie about something like that? Yvonne seemed to have grown suspicious of her actions. For now, when my mother-in-law comes back, I'll confront her. Yvonne was still worked up, but I worried about how this might affect her family relationship. "Yvonne, don't worry about me. Just try to talk to her calmly, without getting too worked up."
"What are you saying, Mom? It's unnatural not to know what happened to $2,600 every month."
"Right, then you should talk to Tom about it. He knows about the allowance, doesn't he?" I advised her, hoping to calm her down. "Okay, I got it. I'll call you back if anything happens." Yvonne hung up after saying that. I regretted causing trouble for Yvonne's new family. Waiting for her call, I couldn't help but worry about potential trouble at their home. About 2 hours later, Yvonne called back. "Mom, my mother-in-law hasn't come back yet, but I wanted to tell you something before she does." Hearing Yvonne speak in a strange tone made me anxious about what had happened. Actually, when I was cleaning my mother-in-law's room earlier, I found a strange photo. It looks like a group photo from her high school club activities. A club activity group photo? What about it? Yvonne continued with some difficulty. In that photo, the face of the tallest girl is blacked out with a marker, and on top of that, it's been scratched with a cutter knife. "I think it might be you, Mom." Indeed, when I joined, I was the tallest among the female members. I remembered having that photo. Now that you mention it, I had that photo too. I was on the back row, on the far left. Yes. That's the person in the photo.
It looked like it was done with so much hatred.
Yvonne told me, prompting me to look back on my high school days. The harassment from Sally started soon after I joined. She was kind to other club members but harsh to me, always burdening me with chores. I wondered why Sally disliked me so much. I'll confront her about this photo. And, Mom, I'm really sorry for not being able to give you proper living expenses until now. What's wrong? Why change the subject all of a sudden? Because when I went to update your bank account today, it looked like a lot of money had been spent. There's hardly any balance left. From now on, I'll take responsibility for bringing you the living expenses. Yvonne told me, making me feel a chill down my spine. Because I had entrusted my cash card to Sally. When I told Yvonne, she quickly retorted.
What? So, does that mean my mother-in-law withdrew everything? I knew something was off. It's impossible for Mom to withdraw $6,000 a month. $6,000? The most I asked her to buy was worth about $40 a day.
It turns out Sally had dipped into not just the living expenses from Yvonne but also into my savings. This is serious. I'm going to the bank right now to freeze the account. The main office should still be open, so I can take care of the procedures immediately. Yvonne said before hanging up. From the next day, Sally stopped coming to our house. Then, 3 days later in the morning, I heard a car stopping in front of our house and went out to check. It was Tom's car. Since it was Saturday, Tom was off work. Getting out of the car were Yvonne, looking furious, and Tom, firmly holding Sally's arm. It seemed Yvonne had confronted Sally about the living expenses and the cash card. Sally had the look of someone who was brought along against her will. Yvonne came up to me and loudly said, "Mom, my mother-in-law was spending the $2,600 she was supposed to give as an allowance. The day before yesterday, I followed her and saw her freaking out at the ATM because she couldn't withdraw money, so I confronted her, and she confessed." "What? Why would she do that?" I asked, looking towards Sally. Sally, avoiding eye contact, answered in a low voice. "I was lonely after losing my husband."
Just because you were lonely, you thought it was okay to use someone else's money?
Tom yelled at her, still holding her arm. Then, he looked at me and apologized.
"I'm sorry, Nora. I'll make sure she pays back every penny she used." "No, Tom, it's not your place to apologize. I shouldn't have trusted Sally and left her with my cash card."
Tom then angrily said to Sally,
"Why didn't you return the cash card right after shopping? Did you always keep it with you?"
No matter what was said, Sally remained silent. Yvonne, looking more intimidating, glared at Sally.
"Just because $2,600 wasn't enough, you even dipped into my mom's account. We'll make sure you pay back everything you've used."
"Wait, Yvonne. It's okay for me."
I couldn't forgive Sally for using the money without permission. Yet, the thought of Yvonne's new family becoming strained was too painful for me.
"Let's just talk this over calmly,"
I suggested, trying to calm everyone down as we entered the house for a discussion. There was something more important than money that needed to be confirmed. I didn't believe Sally was really spending money for some young man. There must have been another reason she was harassing me. We wanted to confirm this directly with her. "Sally, why have you been harassing me since the old days?" For Yvonne to continue living in your house with peace of mind, I want to hear the real reason. Sally, looking like she was recalling unpleasant memories, answered, "Because I have a grudge against you." I was shocked by her unexpected response. What could I have possibly done to her? I tried to think of any reason, but nothing came to mind. A grudge? Did I do something to hurt you, Sally? If there was something you didn't like, I wish you'd tell me honestly. Then, Sally, with anger in her voice, glared at me. "When you entered high school, you stole my boyfriend. He was the one I loved, and as soon as you joined the club, he fell for you." I was taken aback by her words. When I had just joined the club, there was a senior boy who started talking to me. We hit it off and began dating soon after. And after graduating from college, I married him. I had no idea he had been dating Sally before me.
"I'm sorry. I had no idea he was dating you."
I apologized, but it seemed like my words didn't reach Sally.
"I confronted him, and he said he fell for you because you were always considerate of those around you, and that's why he broke up with me. What made me angry wasn't that you took him from me, but that he loved you more than he did me."
Everyone, including Tom and Yvonne, was shocked by Sally's reasoning.
"You've been holding on to this old grudge all this time? So, you've been jealous of my mom and harassing her now because of that? That's just too selfish.
Confronted by her son and daughter-in-law, Sally, with a miserable look, yelled as if to shake off their accusations.
Shut up. He was really important to me. Because of her, I was so shocked I couldn't even think about love again. I even ended up marrying someone my parents chose for me. She ruined my life.
Sally pointed at me, tears streaming down her face. But no one sympathized with her. I had my own hardships. Being ridiculed for my height since I was young. But in high school, I decided to value a kind heart over appearance. It led me to make good friends and find love. However, explaining this to Sally now seemed futile. To avoid escalating the situation, I calmly told Sally.
Even though I didn't know, I apologize for hurting you, Sally. But holding on to that grudge will only hurt Tom and Yvonne. I'll try to stay out of your way to not cause any more trouble. Please, take good care of Yvonne as your daughter-in-law.
Yvonne looked at me, surprised. Why? You did nothing wrong.
It's okay. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me.
Sally, with a complex expression, heard our conversation. Stop it, please. Always playing the good person, that's what I've always hated about you from the start. Sally's eyes filled with even larger tears. She likely realizes her own faults but can't openly admit them. Right now, her heart may be wandering in darkness. Honestly, I no longer wanted Yvonne to stay in a family with such a woman. If possible, I wanted to be by Yvonne's side. But, unsure of what to do, I was at a loss for words. Noticing this, Tom raised his voice in a firm manner.
Enough is enough. I'm fed up with you, Mom. After all, it's your own fault you got dumped. And then you blame others, harboring jealousy and resorting to harassment.
Tom's vehement outburst seemed to shock Sally. Tom, what are you saying? You're not usually one to speak like that. She probably thought her son would always comply with her wishes. But Tom is an honorable person. It's natural for him to criticize what's wrong, even if it involves a parent. Yvonne, with a serious gaze towards Sally, added, I wanted to have a good relationship with you.
That's why I trusted you with the allowance and my mother's care. But now, I can no longer trust you, nor do I want to try to get along.
Sally looked bitter at Yvonne's words.
Yvonne! How dare you, being so arrogant as a daughter-in-law? Tom! Divorce her right now and kick her out. The one leaving is you, Mom.
Tom yelled back, leaving everyone stunned. Sally's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief.
To tell me to leave, Tom?
I've wanted to say this for a while, but Mom always thinks you're right. You never considers the feelings of your family or anyone else, just saying whatever you want, acting selfishly. Dad even said he wanted to leave you, but couldn't because you had no means to support yourself. I've had enough of living with a mother like that.
Tom unleashed his feelings toward his mother, feelings he had likely held back for a long time. Tears flowed again from Sally's eyes. Being criticized to such an extent by her own son, she probably had no words to return. She then knelt on the floor and began to cry out loud. Yet, Tom showed no mercy.
Cry or scream all you want, no one is going to take your side. You said it yourself, didn't you? That your marriage, arranged by your parents, ruined your life.
As Tom said this, Sally stopped crying and looked up. But she seemed unable to meet his gaze, looking away instead. Tom also had a sorrowful expression. Indeed, such matters shouldn't be discussed in front of one's child. As if regretting even having them. With tears in his eyes, Tom said,
I'm severing our parent-child ties. So, please, just leave. And of course, make sure you repay the money you embezzled to Yvonne and Nora.
Sally, spoken to in this way, kept her head down without responding. Likely, she had no means to repay the money. But more than that, the sorrow of being abandoned by her beloved son seemed unbearable.
Why do I alone have to endure such hardship?
She lamented, thinking she was the most aggrieved. If only she could humbly admit her faults and say I'm sorry, perhaps someone could have supported her. I've decided to completely give up on Sally. I'll leave the rest to Tom and Yvonne. Consequently, Sally was expelled from the house. Following discussions with Tom and Yvonne, it was agreed that the embezzled money would be repaid gradually from her survivor's pension and earnings from part-time work. However, for Sally, who had never worked before, just getting by would likely be a struggle. Overwhelmed by the unfamiliar stress of life and work, Sally reportedly made advances to a male customer at her part-time job. The man, also single and about her age, didn't show any disdain towards Sally's advances, and they started dating. However, life doesn't always go smoothly. One day, after staying over at Sally's apartment, the man ran off with her wallet, bank card while she was asleep. A report was filed immediately, but since the man had used a fake name, his true identity and whereabouts remained unknown. In the end, Sally lost everything and now works tirelessly at 2 jobs. I was informed by Yvonne. This is why repayments to me will be delayed for a while. However, I'm not concerned about the money. More so, I felt pity for Sally, who had lived without love, now drowning in it so late in life. Sally, who couldn't even fulfill her role as a mother. She might now live a lonely life without anyone by her side. As for me, my back pain has significantly improved, and I'm considering returning to work soon. But I'm thinking of postponing that for a while. Tom and Yvonne, who have been working hard together, have welcomed their first child. They named her Maureen. They were considering placing her in daycare, but I offered to take care of Maureen instead. Yvonne was delighted, but Tom hesitantly said,
I really appreciate your offer, Nora, but it's too much to ask, especially since your back pain has just healed.
Tom's concern made me feel a bit embarrassed. Then, Yvonne suggested,
How about this? Until Maureen turns 1, we can both take turns taking parental leave while Mom helps us out. That way, it won't be too much of a burden on her, right? That sounds like a plan. Sharing the responsibility of child rearing means no one gets overwhelmed, and it creates a better family environment.
Yes, raising a child is something the whole family should cooperate on. With such a family environment, I'm sure Maureen will grow up to be a wonderful child. I stared intently at her face. Then, it seemed like she looked back at me and smiled.
Look, everyone, she just smiled.
The family was warmed by her first smile.
Seeing such a lovely smile makes me almost forget my back pain. I want to cherish these happy moments for as long as possible.